the Packers don't have a veteran receiver for Jordan Love to throw to. And
Yep.
I recognize that the stereotype is stupid, and I'm in full recognition of this, and it's dumb. But like the receiver, the white guy receiver that gets the label Jim Rat,
Yeah.
route runner. Like I'm talking Adam Thielen, like Cole Beasley,
Wes
all
Welker.
Wes Welker, Danny Amendola, all of these guys who you make fun of for how they're described by the TV commentators,
Sneaky
justifiably
athletic.
right, sneaky athletic. All of those attributes that they name for almost always short white wide receivers is exactly what, not the white part, doesn't need to be white, but is what Jordan Love needs. And he doesn't have it. And I think the perfect thing to look at is look at Bryce Young in Carolina. Bryce Young in Carolina is throwing to DJ Chark, was Terrace Marshall Jr. before he left, um, and Jonathan Mingo, his rookie. But his leading receiver this year is Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen has 500 yards and uh, 49 receptions. 49 receptions, Jordan. The next leading receiver on that team with catches is Terrace Marshall, who requested a trade at 16. His next active one is Jonathan Mingo at 15. The next one after that is Miles Sanders, their freaking running back. That this is what I'm getting at. Bryce Young, leader of the 0-7, 0-6 Carolina Panthers,
Yeah.
having a rough year, has 6 touchdowns to 4 interceptions and has taken 16 sacks, averaging less than 200 yards per game, and has played poorly enough to where um, Andy Dalton has 58 passing attempts. He's having a rough rookie year.
Yes.
And who is his primary target? His only veteran wide receiver. And that's where all of the production is coming from. Adam Thielen has 4 touchdowns. Like that's it. This is what I'm getting at. We haven't really talked about roster construction enough this discourse the entire season. But Brian Gutekunst severely misstepped in not giving Jordan Love a veteran wide receiver. Severely misstepped. Whether it was paying Alan Lazard a contract that he wanted, whether he wanted to come back or not, given that we knew kind of Aaron Rodgers was going to New York,
Yeah.
going out and getting anybody. Like they could have signed DeAndre Hopkins. He was there. They could have traded for him if they really wanted him. Like, who knows what a DeAndre Hopkins does for this team? But golly, a veteran receiver that you know you can count on to catch a ball, I think has to do wonders, right? And so it it really speaks to how poorly this offseason was managed from a roster construction standpoint and how they tried to justify it as, hey, when you're a young team, you gotta make sure that you play your young guys to understand where you're at with some of these players' development. But at that point, they cut the team's nose off to spite their face. They
The
sacrificed
quarterback.
exactly. They sacrificed Jordan Love's development to see the rest of the offense develop. And that isn't how it should have worked. It should have been inhibit Christian Watson or Romeo Dobbs or Jaden Reed's or Samari Touré development in order to see how well Jordan Love can develop. And it just didn't happen. It clearly it's not happening.
No, and I not to be this guy, but there were restrictions in terms of what the Packers could do in terms of limited cap space. But
I mean,
it's I don't
forgive
I
me if I'm
don't
wrong, but DeAndre Hopkins did he get a big contract from Tennessee? I don't think it was a
he
lot.
did get the most that was offered at that time, but that was also, I believe,
I mean, $13 million, that's a lot of money, but
that's a
his
lot of money post June 1st cut because that was
yeah.
what was surprising about him moving on
But
from
even
Arizona
then
in the
they could
first
have
place.
traded for him.
Yes.
He didn't get cut until May 30th.
No, even oh, I thought it was after June 1st.
Nope, he didn't get released by Arizona May 30th. They were trying to trade
Wow.
for him. they gave him permission
Yes,
to,
that's right.
to seek a trade.
Yeah.
And so like it just I don't know. I think you could have gotten him for like a fifth, dude. Clearly, because the if they could have gotten a fifth for him,
And guess who's on the trade block again? By the way.
right. That's what I'm saying. If they could have gotten a fifth for him or offered, they would have gotten it. The Cardinals would have traded him for nothing if they or
Yeah.
cut him for nothing if they
Kind of
could
or
have got
not.
a pick
Yeah.
for him. And so it's just like it's
There the
it's one of the
point.
more frustrating missteps of this offseason so far.
Yeah, because it affects everything. And I think they thought that Aaron Jones was going to be enough of that. AJ Dillon to the lesser extent. Well, I don't know. But the fact that it wasn't even addressed at all and that they're going with such a young offense and set of pass catchers, I mean, it has not done Love favors. To that much is clear.
No, absolutely not. And to belabor this point, we've kind of gotten away from the Vikings and Packers of it all. But I think we're touching on some important things that matter as to why this team may not have success on Sunday. to
Yeah.
tie back into it, but like for Goody to think that like yes, Aaron Jones is the veteran back and receiver that we can rely on for help to Jordan Love's development. That's malpractice, frankly. Like Aaron Jones is not a route running receiver. He's not running post routes and 10-yard digs on routes. He's not. He's a wheel route
Yeah.
guy and a guy over the middle. Like he's not a receiver. He's a freaking running back. And so I think I'm starting to come around on the people who are like calling for Goody to be fired. I'm not there yet because I think this is a very tough season for a lot of fans to swallow, considering we haven't been in this spot in quite some time. But between this roster construction, the roster construction leading to the poor development of Jordan Love, the track record of the picks recently, it's it's building up. It's building up, and depending on how the rest of the season goes, I don't know if I want him picking that pick early.
That is the big question, is that if it continues, we'll be talking plenty about prospects. That much is we've gotten to that point, but we will have a lot of conversations about the brain trust in place in
Mm-hmm.
terms of picking the right guys and developing the right guys, because there's not a lot of offense talent that we could really say after Aaron Jones in 2017 Packers have hit on these guys. I think the other guy that I would probably mention is MVS, and he's on Kansas City.
Yeah. I mean, even then, like he had his own problems. Drops
Oh, of course, yes.
wasn't exactly like he was
Yeah,
Christian Watson light, essentially.
yeah,
They just didn't have a they didn't spend a second round draft pick on him. He was like third or fourth round.
yeah.
Um Fifth round actually, now that I'm looking at it. But yeah, I'm gonna go back to it now that you mentioned it. I'm trying to find it now. So in 2017, they drafted both Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams, two offensive players that worked out quite well. Since then, on offense, they've drafted Jamon Moore, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Equanimous St. Brown. This is a specialist, by the way. Just I'll say just receivers and tight ends.
Yeah.
Um, Jay Sternberger,
Mm,
no receiver drafted in 2019, which is wonderful. Um, AJ Dillon, Josiah
yeah.
DeGuara, no wide receiver drafted in 2020. Amari Rodgers in 2021. Christian Watson in 2022, along with Romeo Dobbs and Samari Toure. And then obviously this year, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, and Luke Musgrave, as well as, I apologize, Dante Van Wicks and Grant DeBose. And then they brought in Malik Heath. And here's the problem with it, as you mentioned. None of these guys, besides Christian Watson, were pre third round. They're just not investing in before this year. My apologies.
Yeah.
None of these guys were the top end talent that they needed them to be. Like, I know, and I yell at people too with this when it comes to revisionist ideas of like draft order, like redrafting things. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah.
And but they take Rashawn Gary this in 2019 at pick 12. For all intents and purposes, a good pick. He's worked out. He's a crucial part um of this team right now. They take Darnell Savage at 21, 9 picks later. And this isn't even like a strong class of receivers. But if you just like, it's always tough to ask someone to reach for a guy. But between Savage and Elton Jenkins at 44, they missed on Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, for all intents and purposes, a good wide receiver. N'Keal Harry, Debo Samuel were three wide receivers taken between those things. Imagine Debo Samuel on this team. And it's tough to ask them to do that because they had Tay and they had like pieces in place, right? Like they were competing. They were picking.
Yeah.
They were. Well, I guess they weren't competing. This was the 2018 year. This is Matt LaFleur's
This is
first draft.
them. Yeah. This is them trying to get back into it.
But then you look at the guys they drafted between that were drafted between Elton Jenkins, and I'm not saying Elton Jenkins is a bad pick. It's a good pick. But then, and again, we are so far off, and I apologize. That getting away from the preview at all. It's kind of turned into something more of a rant, and I apologize, but this is, I think, good things to look at in context of where we're at as a team. Between Elton Jenkins and Jay Sternberger in the third, the wide receivers that were drafted were AJ Brown, Hardman, JJ Arcega Whiteside, not a is fine.
So yeah.
Paris Campbell, who isn't bad. He was good in
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Hasn't really shown much this year from his time in New York Giants. Andy Isabella, whatever. Last pick in the second round, DK Metcalf, and then
Yeah. That's
Deontay Johnson, who is ridiculous. Jalen Hurd, and then Jay Sternberger. The pick, and this has been litigated over a lot of times in Packers Twitter sphere. The pick directly after Chase Sternberger is Terry McLaurin.
mm,
And so it's a failure on Brian Gutekunst's part to not invest in receivers during the Devontae wide receiver one era. It just
yeah.
is. Because I think they got way too into it of trying to win right now, which you cannot blame him for trying to do. They had Aaron Rodgers. You have to maximize the rest of his career. But at the same time, you have to look beyond Devontae Adams in the depth chart. They didn't have anybody. They
No.
didn't have anybody. And so,
Their second best wide receiver after that would have been Lazard, who poached off the practice squad.
right. And
Which they have a knack of doing that, but like
that shouldn't
to
be
your
your way of
point,
doing
it
it.
shouldn't be. Yeah, you fired 9 bullets and you missed every
Missed every
target.
single one.
Yeah,
They haven't hit on any offensive wide receiver or offensive playmakers since Aaron Jones. And it
yeah,
shows
yes. Jordan Love included. So
at this point. Yeah.